I'd like to welcome James Dye. He is the fourth place winner in this year's Juried show, which is now currently hung in the Rankin Gallery as well as the Freed Family Gallery. And folks can come in and see these works in person Wednesday through Sunday from 12 p.m. to 9 p.m. James, thank you so much for joining me and congratulations on your fourth place award.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
So your piece is called Citadel of the Roach. And I want to just start off by asking you about your technique, which is pen and ink. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Sure. It's pretty simple. It's a dip pen and India ink is what I use. Here is dip pen. It's just a pen holder and a pen nib, metal nib, and then, just a bottle of India ink, super permanent, super black ink. And then, it's very ancient way of drawing. You just dip and draw until you run out. You get your grays by stippling, and it's a very painstaking technique. I usually start by drawing in just sort of I call them the major notes, which are the large areas of the piece, so I can try to figure out where everything is, figure out where the background's going to be, and then a lot of the textures and everything that come later, a lot of that's more intuitive, and that's a little more fun, bringing things out and pushing them back and letting my imagination go a little wild within, very well-regulated space.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's interesting to hear you talk about almost the layering effect of how you do it. I mean, this particular piece that's hung in our show is extremely intricate. And I was just on your website and saw all the other pieces that are extremely intricate. And what you just said about your pen and the ink is super permanent. I can imagine that you do have to start with some sort of idea in your head as to what it's going to look like.
Yeah, there's that, initial setup. I can see, pretty much where the border is going to be and where the big area. I don't necessarily know what's going to be here, but I know about how large it's going to be, and there's something, there's always the initial spark for the piece that I have to get in there. And this one is obviously the roach. And then once you kind of have that, entry point, and you can sort of build up around it. And sometimes I really know where I'm going, and sometimes I just have a general idea, and I kind of let the piece tell me where we're going to end up.
Yeah, talk about that. As I was perusing your website, I saw something about archetypes. So what is driving these drawings?
Narrative is the most important thing in all my work. I want all my pieces to feel like they're a story or a piece of a story. And I know what the story is, but I sort of want everybody to sort of, I look at a lot of mythological artwork and religious icons and religious artwork and, ancient artwork. And, everything has, there's all these archetypes of myth that just come from our general archetypes that are kind of buried deep inside of all of us. And you see all these recurring themes and they just keep coming up. And it's where your dreams are coming from, and we're exploring them in myth. And it's very interesting. I read a lot of Joseph Campbell and all sorts of comparative mythology stuff. And so when I'm making these pieces, I have sort of that foundation, that shared sort of mythical language, and then I sort of build off of that. So I sort of explore myths by creating my own. And the interesting thing is, if you see an icon or a piece of religious or mythological work, and you don't have the context, then you sort of supply your own context, and you recognize things in there, and you think, oh, that's what that's about. But that's because that's, it's something inside of you that you're connecting with, and then you sort of bring in everything from your life and your cultural background and create your own story around this piece. And ultimately, it's all the same story being told over and over again in just a million different ways.
Yeah, which is the coolest thing, for lack of a better adjective, right now. Is that, archetypal, that philosophy and study of archetypes, we are human beings, vessels of these archetypes across all cultures and across the entire world. So, these pieces end up speaking to everyone universally. And like you said, they can fill the story in, but those archetypes trigger human beings, kind of in the same way. And you're not the first person to delve into those archetypes.
Certainly not. It's it's everybody's always exploring it, but that's sort of the fun thing about it is, it's one of those things that everybody's looking for the answers, but nobody really has them. You know, it's like, where's it? What was the first story? Where's it all coming from? You know?
Right. Which means it's endless interpretation and endless art, which is just fabulous. So can you talk to us about how you got started? Did you, I mean, were you born with a pen in hand, or did you learn this as you went on with your life? How did this start for you?
I drew a lot as a kid, and I wrote a lot too. And so I had just, you know, I think my mother somewhere up in the attic has everything I've ever drawn in my entire life, every marker drawing, every, you know, crayon drawing, and also every story I've ever written. And I grew up in a house just full of books. And so my parents really wanted me to go to college for writing. And so my big, you know, rebellion was to go to art school instead. And but when I got to art school, I still wanted to do writing. So I sort of, you know, I always had both of those things going on. And, you know, when I burn out on one, I can go to the other one. And so I'm ready to go back to the other one. But ultimately, it's the narrative thing. It's, you know, I'm always exploring that in both ways. So in terms of being born with a pen in my hand, I was always drawing. But when I got to art school, I actually fell in love with printmaking. And so I did etching and woodcut, and I loved it. And then when I came out of art school, I didn't have a press anymore. So that sort of direct line technique that I really loved, and just really working a piece for months and months and months until you find something. I really found it with the dip pen. It gave me sort of the line like an etching needle. And so I've been going with that. And, you know, I have a press now, but I'm so deeply into the ink that I haven't gone back to printmaking yet. I promise I will in the future. I keep telling myself that. But the ink drawings actually take a very long time. So I'm always saying, you know, I'm going to get back to the etching, but we'll see.
So where did your love or your interest in Joseph Campbell and that study of archetypes, where did that come from?
Oh, I mean, that was my parents.
Okay.
Well-worn copies of Joseph Campbell all over the house.
So you're saying if you leave the right books out, you know, children will grow up and be producing brilliant art.
House with books in easy reach of your kids. Certainly.
Yeah, and there's a lot of truth to that. So a quick question about the intricacy of the drawings. I'm curious about the drying process. And like you said, it takes a long time to do one of these. What is it? So how long does that ink take to dry, and how, just tell me a bit about the actual pen to paper process.
So India ink is really great to work with. It dries very fast. So, I mean, if you're putting down a line, as long as you're not putting out a huge thick blob of ink, I mean, in a few minutes, you know, it's not going to smudge or anything. It's got shellac in it, so it's got like a shine to it. And unlike a dye ink, it doesn't like really absorb into the paper, so it sits on top. So if you run your hand over an India ink drawing, you can really feel like the valleys and everything. And that sort of attaches to printmaking in that way. That was one of the ways that I really love, because I use the shellac like India ink for the lines, so that picks up the light just a little bit and they pop out a little more. And then I have a matte India ink for the black areas that kind of falls back, so that you can sort of get this a little bit of a 3D effect in just the, you know, when you're looking at it just the right way. It just feels a little more, I don't know, real than just, you know, like a regular pen would, just, you know, being absorbed into the paper. So usually when I do like my initial sketch, you know, it's a very thin pencil line when I'm just figuring out, like, you know, where the central figure is going to be. And then I go over with, you know, the ink, and within a couple of minutes, I can like very gently erase out that line.
Yeah.
Very gently, because you don't want to speak.
Well, this piece is magnificent, and your other pieces that are featured on your website are magnificent as well. And I encourage people to come in and actually see this piece in person. They can see it on our website at catamountarts.org, as well as all of the other ones. But like we're hearing from you, James, right now, is being in front of it, actually having your eyes on it, and seeing that it's not one-dimensional and by any means, just hearing about the ink itself. I encourage folks to come into the gallery and check it out. So thank you, James, so much. And congratulations again on your 4th place award in this year's Juried show. Thanks for joining me.
Thank you.